So thank you everyone for joining us. My name's Charlie Guthrie. I'm from AIS Training and Survivex, training providers here in the United Kingdom. This is part of a series of webinars. We're coming slightly towards the end of them now, but they're all aimed at telling you guys what projects are coming up with some of the bigger recruiting organisations in the country at the moment, primarily talking wind and oil and gas. There's still a couple more to come. So we are still speaking to GWO, the Global Wind Organisation, tomorrow morning at 11 AM. And we're speaking to Wood Group, one of the world's largest engineering companies. And that's at 3 PM tomorrow. So you can still register for those via our websites, survivex.com and training.aisgroup.co.uk. So jump on our websites, head to the news pages. You can still register via those. We have got a Q&A function. So the girl's going to talk to us today, and then in the last 5 or 10 minutes, we're going to pick up some questions. So you'll see at the bottom of your screen is a Q&A. Pose questions as we go through it. We'll pick out as many as we can. The rate we've had them over previous webinars, yes, we'll probably have more questions than we have time for. But rest assured, once our series of webinars are finished, so by the weekend, we'll send an email out with the video of the webinar so you can watch it again, pick up on any details in there. And we'll also include a bit more of a Q&A within that as well. So if we miss anybody, you can pick it up through that. But in the meantime, delighted to welcome the team from Windhoist here, one of the largest wind turbine installation companies. I'm here with Karine, who is a project coordinator, and Laura, who is the resource lead. And I believe we're going to start with Karine. So over to you.
Thank you very much. So I'm just going to start off, as I said, Windhoist are a leading wind turbine installation contractor. We offer heavy craneage, we offer mechanical, electrical services. We also do servicing and decommissioning of turbines. So we kind of cover quite a lot of different things just in the wind company. Our clients that we work for are a combination of a lot of the big names that you see out there. There's Siemens, Vestas, Nordex, MHIV, GE and Enercon, and we probably work primarily across kind of Siemens and Nordex and MHIV in Europe. Vestas is mostly in Australia, which covers across we do have 3 different companies. We've got Windhoist UK, we've got Windhoist Ireland, and we do have Windhoist Australia. We have an office in Melbourne that kind of deals with that, and they're primarily Vestas just now. And they have quite a few projects and have had quite a few projects over the last kind of few years. We do onshore, offshore, pre-assembly across Europe and Australasia. So as you can see, it starts to kind of get bigger and bigger. We did start with just, we were just a crane plant company. That's where we started with. And I think maybe in less than 10 years, we've kind of went from being a plant company to kind of expanding to cover all these different places and stuff, different places and different services that we offer. We have nearly 500 direct employees that we've got with the company, both on all 3 companies. That doesn't include, though, our subcontractors, who are also obviously very valuable to the company. So it's quite a kind of big thing for us, who started off with one wee man in his crane. So we've expanded that greatly over the last 10 years. We have this year, I believe, so far 17 confirmed projects across all the companies, and I think we've got a good bunch in the background that haven't yet been confirmed, and obviously we're working on them. Last year, I think we finished over 30 sites. I want to say 33, because I think we counted at one point. Now, this was during the pandemic in 2020. So we did at least between Windhoist Ireland, UK and Australia. Sorry, that doesn't include Australia. That's Windhoist UK and Ireland. There was 33 sites last year that we finished. And this year we have been in the last year that we've been in the UK, the Netherlands, Ireland, Sweden, Finland, Norway, Denmark, and even Morocco. Obviously, Australia has got its own kind of stuff going on as well. But that's where we have been in the past year. And obviously, we're always looking to continue to grow. And if I pass you on to Laura, she'll be able to tell you a little bit about kind of what's coming and her role then within recruitment.
So I am the resource lead for Windhoist, so I manage recruitment across all the functions of the business, so that's back office and site-based recruitment. So if you were generally applying for a job with Windhoist, at some point you'll speak to me in the process. So with regards to the recruitment that's going on right now, that would interest yourselves primarily, we are actively recruiting right now for experienced technicians. So we're bringing on for a kind of offshore pre-installation project within the UK, and there's a lot of active recruitment that's happening for that. What we'll be finding coming up is that we will also be recruiting across some of our other projects and also for Europe over the next hopefully month or two, bringing on people for that. Obviously, I get a lot of questions and a lot of calls on a regular basis with regards to bringing on people who are looking to get a start in the industry. And I think Windhoist in general as a company, we're good at giving people a start and developing them through the organisation. I think at the minute, just with COVID restrictions and training, etc., that we're requiring for some of our upcoming projects, we're probably not going to be in a position to be able to bring on kind of trainees until probably March, April time, where there'll be a real ramp up in our recruitment from that point onwards. So if someone's looking to potentially come on board with us, you're probably looking at that as your time scale of when it would be a time for us to come back to you. Other than that, in terms of the jobs that we recruit for primarily kind of wind turbine technicians, installation technicians. We take people from both a mechanical and an electrical background primarily. That's not to say that that's completely exclusive. We generally look at the kind of person that we're bringing on board as well. So we do really well in terms of taking people that have come from a hands-on tools background from different areas too. Agriculture backgrounds always worked well for us as well in the past, as well as people who've worked even in the armed forces, etc., used to working away from home and getting their hands dirty. We also take on board primarily electricians that join us. We're expanding our electrical function as a business over the next kind of coming year or so. So bringing on board electrical people in terms of high voltage and also general electricians is going to be a focus for us. Other than that, from the technician perspective, we also regularly recruit for site agents, if that's something that would be of interest. So someone who is based on site, has some hands-on experience, but also works in the back office in terms of supporting the site manager. So I think those are the roles that you would primarily see in me advertising besides the back office functions. Generally speaking, how we recruit for people, if we're going to be having a recruitment drive, you'll always see it on our LinkedIn. So if you make sure that you're following our LinkedIn page, then you'll always be informed with regards to upcoming projects, who we're recruiting for and what skill set we're looking for. We also obviously advertise on job boards, etc., but social media would be the first point of contact. And we have a good bank of CVs from people that obviously send them across speculatively often. So if anyone was wanting to do that, that's careers@windhoist.co.uk, and I monitor that inbox with regards to when positions are coming up. So as things stand, for people that are coming on board with us that are at that kind of trainee level, we generally ask that you come on board with your standard GWO, your medical. Anything over and above that's great. Kieran can talk to you a bit about kind of the training and things that we look for in people and what's required on our different sites. But as a basic, you're looking at those two, and then from there we'll invest in you in terms of BTT and anything that's site specific from there. So those are the basics of joining us. I'll pass back to Kieran.
Yeah, it's I've put in a couple of different notes down here. I'm a project coordinator, and we do a lot of different roles all kind of rolled into one. You know, we do all the country legislation, documentation, the training, the travel, the accommodation, basically a lot of the kind of back office stuff to do with site. We still have a site agent on site. We do all the kind of assistant projects and the project manager and all that kind of stuff. So we do a lot of it all mixed together, which makes it good because it means then I can give you a better idea of what it is that we would need training wise. You know, Laura had said that having the GWO BST, which is a 5-day course for anybody who hasn't even looked into any of the training. You can do the 6 days if you do sea survival. Obviously, sea survival is only required for those who are doing offshore work. So it's not actually required for onshore. If you have it, it's great. It's a nice extra bonus. We would obviously invest in potentially doing the GWO BTT, but if you do have that, I know it's quite pricey, but if you do have that, it's an extra bonus as well. It's a 4-day training course. Having an RUK medical or even an oil and gas with a Chester step. An oil and gas without a Chester step is not it's not in competition with the RUK Medical, so they kind of either have to be the RUK Medical, which is a renewable UK medical, or the oil and gas with Chester SEP, the two of them then make them quite equal. And any HSE endorsement in the UK. If you're working in the UK, you need either a CCNSG, CSCS Green Labourers card, or a Northern Irish CSR card. They are all accepted on UK sites. If you're on a pre-assembly site or an offshore site, it's usually the CCNSG, it's 2 days training. So if you have that, it kind of covers all bases. The CCNSG is quite good. Those kind of 4 things are really the basic requirements that we would use, which means you can get on all our sites with them, but then there's specifics for the client, there's specifics for the country, there's little added bonuses that are great for us because we would potentially not then have to invest that money, which obviously is a good bonus for us. So for bonus training for us is things like the GWO Slinger Signaler. Obviously the GWO version doesn't run out, but if you do have the CPCS, blue card or red card in a Slinger Signaler, that's just as good. It's the same thing for us in that kind of sense. It's just one's done by GWO. If you have the ART, the Advanced Rescue Training, which is about 3 days, I think, training, that's also brilliant. We have to have we have to have restrictions of how many people we have on site with that. So I think there's like a minimum of maybe 2 to 4 people per site that have to have it, depending on how big the site. So we do need people that have our ART. We also need to have an amount of people on each site that have enhanced first aid, or advanced, but some people advertise it differently. The enhanced or advanced first aid, which is a GWO one, does include also you just having the normal GWO. So I think that's 3 days, and it gives you the normal first aid and it gives you the enhanced first aid. A CPCS telehandler ticket, red or blue card, you know, both of these are also brilliant. And if you've got an IPAF MUP card, you know, these are things that we have to have on site. The ratios have to be met on site. So, you know, we might find that we're maybe low on one or the other, and what we're looking for is somebody who might potentially have one of these bonus trainings, and they're brilliant for us to have them. Clients specifically themselves will then maybe ask for extra client specific training. So things like Siemens, if you've got SGTT, that's the full package, not just the cable package. So for those of you who might have worked for Siemens before and you've heard about the SGTT, log into group account and see what you've got. If you've only got, say, the cable ABC, if this doesn't make sense to any of you, then that's fine. It makes sense to those who have worked with Siemens. But we're looking for the full SGTT package. You'll know that you did it because it would have been so ingrained into your brain that you had to sit in a classroom for nearly a week to do it. If you didn't do that, you don't have the full package. However, if you have the full SGTT, that's brilliant. Nordex installation, you would have had to go to Germany to do it. So if you've worked with Nordex before and you have Nordex installation, brilliant. We can actually do some of the stuff that's specifics that Nordex quite like us to do for the specifics, but Nordex installation, if you've got it, brilliant. MHIV packages, if you've worked with MHIV before, you know, we're looking for the TOS, the STAT, the MMI, the WTSR, the ENSR. Again, if you don't understand what these are, simply because you've not worked with them before, but if you have worked with MHIV, you'll understand if you've done them. Vestas, the Lotto 2, the Level D, the ESQ, any of these extra little added client bonuses are brilliant, especially if it's with a client that we've worked with before. We pay a lot of money into training a lot of these guys up specifically for these clients, and if you've got them, that's absolutely brilliant. So yes, we do take an absolute basic, and that's usually for those who are trainees. If you've been in wind before, you know how easy it is to start picking up different things, different extras. If you're a painter and you've got blade, you know, things like your Siemens as well with SGTT, if you've got your blade training, or if you've got a Kelly Oak and all these kind of things, they're all extra bonuses. These are all the things that we want to hear from you if you're applying. So we understand that you might have worked at Tesco when you were younger, but tell us about the training. Is it in date? If it's not in date, tell us you did it and it's expired, but that you did it, and we could potentially renew it, especially if it's a CPC card, like a plant card. A lot of these allow us to just pay £35 and we can renew it for you. You know, this is all the extra stuff that we kind of want to hear. But it's all extra things that if you want to get into wind, read about it, learn about it, and you know, it will start to give you a little bit more information on where, if you start off, that you could potentially grow to. Obviously with MHIV, it's offshore. Siemens do offshore as well. that I've got a couple of different kind of things that go about recently, but we work specifically with MHIV offshore just now. And it's a lot of training, and you know, your MUP training, not your MUP, sorry, your HUIT training, which AIS obviously offer. If you've got your helicopter training, and we do the ones with the air compression. I can't think if it's like, I always think it looks like with cabs, but that's not actually what it looks like. But they're the helicopter training that we do as well. So there are all these different things. If you've got them, mention them. If you don't have them, it's okay. We will invest, and we will put the money into it, especially if we're trying to get you onto a specific site that it requires. But these are all the extra bonuses that Laura was talking about. So there is a basic, but as you can tell, there's a lot of different extras depending on what your background is. If you are more into your blade, if you're an electrician, if you're mechanical, if you're pre-installation, or if you're a plant driver, whether you're heavy plant, you know, if especially specifically for us, if you have a crawler ticket. I know this goes away from the wind turbine kind of part of it, but obviously we do plant, and a lot of people do subcontract their own plant, but we've got it ourselves. We use a lot of crawlers, and it's very difficult to get crawler training. Not every training centre, specifically across the UK and Ireland, does actually have a crawler that you can do your training on. So most people will have a mobile crane, but not the crawler. If you have a crawler, brilliant, that's perfect. Especially if you've got the likes of your Liber tickets, your you know, your 1750s, and stuff like that. Crane people will know what I'm talking about if this is a little bit off topic for some of you. Even those who potentially have your kind of smaller vehicles, we can start off with our smaller vehicles, and then you learn. We can put you through training with Liber, and with some of the other kind of cranes that we use, but I think most of our cranes are Liber, actually, to be fair. But yeah, that's covers plant in that kind of sense. Our plant department sits in Monaghan, and we work really closely with them, and I used to help project coordinate the plant. And if you're an electrician, you know, you want to make sure that you've got your gold cards or whatever the equivalent is. I know that there was a question that somebody had put up about the location of an employee important to Windhoist. Obviously, with Brexit coming about, we have to make sure that everybody who applies to potentially be sat onto a UK site has the right to work in the UK. We have to make sure that potentially you have the ability not just to work in the UK, but to work abroad. So if you are in the UK, we need to make sure that then you also have the ability to work across Europe. So that then means that potentially anybody who is on a passport, who flies on a passport that isn't a European passport, so say you are South African, but you're not a Portuguese South African, and you don't have that Portuguese passport, we would then need to apply for a visa if you're Australian and stuff like that, but you're not looking to work in Australia. All these things come into play. So the best option would be as if you're, say, British or Irish, and you have the right of residency to Britain and Ireland, and that also means then that we can apply for the visas for you to work across Europe. So hopefully then that gives you enough of a bit of an information, and we can maybe go to answering some questions that we've got popped up on the side here.
That's great, Gerian. That's really good. It's good to hear just how much Windhoist gets involved in. You know, Windhoist, and the name gives it away from where you started, but then right through to decommissioning at end of life as well, which I guess is becoming a bigger factor, especially for some of the onshore wind farms that have been there for 30, 40 years now, and possibly some of the offshore ones are getting towards that age. And also the scale as well. It's good to hear you talking about some of the where people can come from. You know, agriculture I hadn't particularly considered before, whereas, you know, military and electrical backgrounds I definitely had done. And I think, judging from some of the questions I can see, you've answered quite a few where people are asking what sort of training that they need to do. One question I had, so Laura, you talked about advertising across jobs boards and such like that. Can you point anyone in the direction which are the kind of couple of bigger jobs boards that you post to?
Yeah, generally speaking, if it's going to be something that's site specific, you would probably often find it on Indeed. For example, other than that, it might be on a country specific job board, depending on where it is. So if it's a role in Scotland, you might find it on S1 Jobs, for example. But generally speaking, I think your best point of contact is probably LinkedIn. And if you've already sent us across your CV in recent times and you have a relevant skill set and background, then I will have your details on file to come back to you in the first instance. So even if you're sending across the CV, we get such huge volumes that we can't come back to everybody that obviously sends them across, but they do get kept on file for obviously a certain period of time, and then we can get back in touch with you when we've got a role available and if you're still free.
Yeah, great, brilliant. This one's quite specific, Harry, but I'll ask it because it was very relevant to what you were talking about. So Andrew was saying, what certificates or experience do you need for heavy lifting installation? He's been doing it 8.5 years and he's just trying to get his first foot in the door.
For heavy lifting, what we would be looking for is, obviously if you do have like a mobile crane kind of ticket, and is that the kind of heavy lifting he's meaning? Yeah,
I guess so, yeah. Sorry, I didn't specify.
So we have a lot of guys that we use the CPCS tickets. Some of them have SOLAS tickets, but we don't have as many Irish sites on just now. If you do have a SOLAS ticket, converting the SOLAS ticket into a CPCS ticket is actually a nightmare. You need to go in front of a board and everything. It can take up to 20 weeks to do it. So if you have a CPCS ticket, it's much easier to put back into the Irish SOLAS. But most of them, if they have the slinger and they have a telehandler or a mobile crane with a crawler and possibly even your crane supervisor, even a MUP on there, anything that you've got, but we take the red cards and the blue cards with CPCS, and we take the experienced operator cards with SOLAS. If you have gained your tickets from another country, so we've got a couple that were potentially German or Polish or Portuguese, etc., you will still need to do a CPCS or a SOLAS because many European countries don't accept the crane tickets that specifically have been given. Especially, I know that some of the German ones, they don't run out, and they kind of come across that you're never retested. So it's really quite difficult to show that you're still competent down the line, whereas the red card is valid for 2 years and you can extend it for a year if you want. And then you need to do the NVQ, the blue card. That's valid for 5 years, 4 years, 5 years. And then even if after that's ran out, you've still got a 5-year grace period where that can be renewed. And then all you would need to do is the touchscreen test again. And you can go to some of the places. We use quite a lot of places in Northern Ireland actually to do some of the retesting, because we've got such a good kind of connection with them just now. So if you are in crane, all you really need to do is show that you have had experience, you've got your plant tickets, and potentially if you've got anything from LIBOR or DMAG or anything like that you've potentially done, you've got these extra, I think they call them like awareness certificates and stuff like that, then they're also really, really good. So that's what we use. And most of our cranes are LIBOR. So if you do have LIBOR, mostly 1750s and stuff like that into tower cranes and stuff. So if you've got anything like that, that's useful for us. Luckily, the crane is more flexible when it comes to wind than some of the other stuff. But if you're in crane and you want to be a wind turbine technician, that's different. That's a completely different kind of flip. But if you wanted to do heavy haulage, we've also got, sorry, I'm talking about cranes, but we also do heavy haulage. So if you are a lorry driver and you've got your CPC card and you can show that you've got even your dangerous goods and all that kind of stuff, we also take lorry drivers. So.
Great, brilliant. Switching skill sets a little bit from lifting to electricians, it would appear from the questions that there's a lot of electricians listening in. How easy is it for an electrician to switch over to wind? So if we assume he's fairly experienced as an electrician, but not had a job in wind before, is that skill set enough?
Yes, so we take on quite a lot of electricians who haven't worked specifically in the wind industry before. Generally speaking, it is a skill set that when we are hiring that we do look for, and as I kind of touched upon earlier, we're expanding electrically too, so I would anticipate that it's something that we'll look for down the line this year as well. I would say from personal experience, we recruited quite a lot of electricians last year into the business, and we invest a lot in training electricians to kind of come aboard and join the cabling teams. I seen a question come in from someone saying if they didn't have their electrician's gold card, if they were a trainee electrician, if we'd look at them too. That's definitely the case. We would still look at somebody's experience, even if they weren't a fully qualified electrician. Obviously, in terms of the experience that they're coming on board with would be reflected potentially in them being more of a trainee with regards to rate, etc. But from there, we would definitely look at someone who's got electrical or a mechanical background, or any of the other ones we touched upon, is something that we can definitely develop if you've got the acumen.
Great. Where do you stand, Laura, on the certificate versus experience balance? Would you prefer someone that had lots of experience in the sector and maybe not the certification, or vice versa?
Specifically to electricians?
I suppose anything, but yeah.
It's nice to have the certificates in terms of obviously having the proof that you've got the kind of skill set, or you've completed the apprenticeship, etc. Then it's always good for us to know that you've got a kind of strong background or where you've worked. I think besides that, we're obviously still looking for somebody who comes on board with the right soft skills to join us, who kind of displays the right acumen with regards to joining the company, and who's had a strong background working for other companies. So in terms of your duration of time with other employers, things like that are important to us too, alongside all the other parts.
I'm done. Great, brilliant. There's another question coming from Theodore. Karen, I don't know if it's one for you. Do you consider trainees with less hands-on experience but with an undergraduate degree in energy for wind technician roles?
I think we get a lot of CVs that come in, and Laura will be able to confirm this. We get a lot of people who come in who potentially have a lot of training and they're just really looking for that foot in the door, and they haven't been able to get that experience at all, and they're just looking for somebody really to give them a shot. And we have actually been really good with quite a lot of our wind turbine trainees. And I think I would say we probably give most people a shot more than quite a lot of companies. But I think it depends on the time of the year that we can actually safely place them, to make sure that they're actually placed with an experienced technician on site. So what we don't want to find is that we've taken in a lot of people and we've put them all on the same site, because then nobody's building turbines and everybody's learning. So we have to make sure that we potentially take them in drips and drabs. If you have your education, you've done it through your education, to us that is experience. You have put that education behind you and you do have that knowledge in a sense. But what we will be then, well, obviously we need to make sure that we only take so many at a time. So if you can imagine so many that email on but potentially even a daily basis, we need to make sure that they're coming in at perfect points so we don't accidentally end up with the whole newbie. But like Laura had said earlier on, you know, March and April time is our time this year that would be best to take them on, because we need to bring on the experienced technicians first, make sure that all the ratios are sorted on site, and then we can slot in these turbine technicians that are trainees to make sure that they are genuinely actually being taught properly on site, and that they're being looked after basically by the right people. So March and April time, after we've recruited the experienced people, will be the time for us this year. But yes, we definitely will.
And I would say with regards to the undergraduate background that person touched upon in their question, that type of background generally tends to work quite well for us as well, in terms of if we're bringing someone on board in like a site agent type role. That's a really important position on site for us too. We like to try and make it a little bit of a hybrid role, in terms of you come on board, you've got your GWO, etc. You can still do a little bit of the install in terms of learning the turbines themselves, but you can also work closely with the kind of site manager and doing some of the back office stuff too. So people from that type of background, kind of undergraduate degree background, etc., who are really keen and ambitious and motivated to come on, can do well within that type of role for us too.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, we've got a few site agents that are doing that now. So
you were talking then about kind of matching people up with experienced and less experienced, and it's something that we try and do in the training centres as well. We're fortunate in some respects because we're one of the bigger centres, so there's a lot of people come through, and we can therefore afford to have, you know, a couple of the more experienced people with 4 or 5 of the less experienced people. So when it comes to putting your harness on, double hooking, you know, using all that, it's very helpful for them to just bounce ideas and talk to the others.
Definitely, and it's also for an HSE point of view. You know, you want to make sure that somebody's always got an eye on you, just in case. And the same thing is, it's nice to know that you feel safe, to know that when you're on site and you're not particularly confident about what it is that you're doing, that somebody does have an eye on you, so that they can potentially stop you in case an accident does happen. You know, so it's not just for your safety, for the site safety, you know, it's also just to make sure that you know, just before potentially you could maybe make a mistake, that somebody can maybe show you how it was meant to be done, and then you can fix them on the way across. That's what we try and do. We try and grow amongst each other, and everybody learns from each other that way. And it then means that you've got a better one-on-one, and you're probably more quicker to learn. And a lot of our new starts that have came in as complete trainees are still with the company, and they're still absolutely happy with us. And it's because of the way that they have came through, and that they've had that one-on-one as well.
Great. We've probably got time for one last question, because we're just touching on 4:30 now, and it's probably fairly relevant. I can see a good part of the audience are in oil and gas. So what's your position, if you like, on people transitioning across from oil and gas? Is it an attractive kind of person for you that's coming from that sector?
I think there's definitely a lot of relevant skills and experience that they bring with them coming from the oil and gas sector. We do get a lot of interest and queries from people who've worked in this sector in the past or have had long careers working in oil and gas, and they're looking now to make the transition into working in renewables. I think from our perspective, we definitely see the value in bringing on board people like that. I think the only caveat to that really would be that obviously they're coming on board joining ourselves at more of a trainee type position in terms of learning the actual wind industry itself. So as long as they are comfortable that they're coming on board on that basis and they're going to be developed, and down the line there'll be experienced wind turbine technicians that are experienced within the wind energy industry too, then it's something that we definitely look at and we definitely cater for.
Yeah,
and
so
also just that they're good with working on land. I mean, a lot of these people are working in the sea, and there's not as many offshore jobs out there. And I know a lot of people who have worked offshore would prefer to go back offshore, but for wind turbines. But if you're wanting to get into wind, you know, actually you're really good at jumping into the experience on pre-assembly, on onshore and on offshore. And then when the opportunity does arrive for you potentially to go offshore, then you'll have had that onshore experience potentially. So don't narrow it down to potentially going from oil and gas to offshore, because it's so part of your life potentially. And the same with those who are ex-regs as well. You know, they're so used to being away for such a long time. You know, it's part of, as long as you're open and you're accepting of it, then just let the wind industry take you where you naturally will go. And if an opportunity arises for you to get offshore, then that's exactly where you'll go.
Yeah, so accept that you are essentially starting at the bottom of the chain again in a new sector, so you don't necessarily know everything about a wind turbine that others will do, and also that lifestyle change possibly as well. Well, I think that's probably all we've got time for. There have been more questions have come in than we've had time to answer, so we will cover them off via a blog post on our websites, survivex.com and training.asgroup.co.uk. So wherever you're registered for the webinar, you can go and find those, and we'll share a copy of this video as well. This is part of a series of webinars. So we've been talking entirely about wind today, and we are talking to GWO, which is the awarding body for wind certification that Karen has been spending a lot of time talking about. So we're talking to them tomorrow at 11 AM, and it's not too late to register for that webinar. And for those that are looking at oil and gas, onshore and offshore, we're talking to Wood, which is a global engineering firm. We're talking to Wood at 3 PM tomorrow. But other than that, all that's left for me to do is to thank you guys so much for coming and talking to the delegates here today. It's really appreciated. Thank you for your time.
Thanks everyone. Cheers.
Thank you.